Now, that doesn't mean that that is exactly what's happening. I mean, it is like if somebody said, do you think it's possible for everything to be a coincidence and that as soon as we die, literally that's it? I would say no, based on my own personal experiences, but I don't have anything that I could give you as irrefutable evidence. I can tell you that using the same scientific methods that are used to determine probability, the Occam's razor approach to being able to look at which solution is most likely, it does not look like this is a random set of occurrences. With that being a prevailing result of Occam's razor, I would then say that I believe that with looking at that I think that existence will continue in some fashion after we die, especially with the look at energy work and the fact that when people die, it does look like there is an energy that has been captured and measured that doesn't disappear, that transitions someplace else, right?
Yep.
But even that, some people would take as not religious, right? So when you go to look at some of what you're currently doing and you're like, I don't understand why these people have a hard time, like I'm just giving them valid information. These are people who are the people who they know, right? They heard somebody say aliens and they thought, oh, if aliens exist, that means my life is a fraud. Conspiracy theorist, oh, aliens control the government. The scientist, if aliens exist, what good does any of the technological research I'm doing mean? Like, they're all that, like, you can use that and have the information go any way. Now, typically, those are people who are just not as bright. They're dumb, fearful people.
Yes, fear underlined stars.
Right? So a lot of the work that you've done gets blowback because of fear. If you understand that, how do you get then somebody to work together? I know that they make decisions based off of fear. So first I try and alleviate their fear, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to use their fear to get them to do what I want.
That makes sense, yeah.
It's how Erica works. Not Erica,
Sarah.
I'm sorry. It's how Sarah works. Erica works as a similar person who works through fear. She operates out of fear. Sarah uses other people's fears to get what she wants.
And she's quite good at it.
Correct. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
You can tell her I said that. She will take that as a man.
That would just like make her entire year.
Right. What are the... If you were to break down all major religions, they basically say to do one or two things, depending on how you want to break that down, and to not do one other thing. What do they tell everybody to do?
They tell everybody, well, I was going to say, you're supposed to live like God would like, or whoever you believe that person to be. You're supposed to...
Even without God, the ones that don't have a God, karma. Be nice and good.
Yeah. Good to treat other people nice.
To yourself and to others. Right? What do they tell you not to do?
Lie, cheat, be awful.
No.
Be evil. No. Be evil.
No, they don't tell you not to be evil. That's what's interesting.
What
they
did
don't
they say?
Not evil. They don't. They say don't fear.
Yeah, that's true. That's what the angels say.
Ask you what they specifically say not to do. If you do what they tell you to and what not to, when are you going to end up being evil?
Never. So it's a corollary, or it's
not even a corollary. It's it's a side, because now I have to try and define, if you're caught up in moral debates about what evil is, you're closer to it than the person who just follows the 2 rules.
That's a good point.
I'm going to give you the equivalent. How many of the statistics can I throw out before I'm tampering with the data? I mean, now you tell me, is that a made-up thing, or does that actually happen?
It happens every day, just in our university alone.
The answer is none.
Right.
Or you're tampering with the data.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know that this data
They'll
is
say it's just the
reliable.
outlier. That's what they say.
Okay, if it's an outlier, and you would say, and my response to that is, if you've thrown away all of your outlier data, that means you have a corrupted data set. What do we do with corrupted data sets?
We trash them.
We throw them away. So the only question that you have when you go to look at information is, does this include the outlier data?
Mm-hmm.
Does it include the outlier data and the no proms? Because no proms is even worse than an outlier, right? Does this include any outlier and no prom data? And if they say no, then you go, okay, well then we have to strike yours from. It may be valid for a conclusion within a very narrow search and study, but I cannot use none of your data. None of your data can be used for anything.
Mm-hmm.
You have a general conclusion specifically for what you looked at here, but your data is useless. But we still have it collected, but you didn't publish it, which already prejudices somebody against the data that is found when they compare the 2 data sets.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's very true.
You either are following the first rule and the second rule, or you are not.
I didn't throw out a single piece of my 9,900 pages of data.
No. It has to be accessible. Does it have to be published within the written work? No. It just needs to be accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's valid data. If you actually look at what the guidelines are for having data included in documents stored on the site, those are their requirements. Otherwise, they will specifically edit out your data fields.
Oh yeah, they have fun doing that.
Research.net, right?
ResearchGate.
ResearchGate, if you do not include all of it, they will ask. Not only will they ask, they can tell. There's no such thing as a perfect curve, right?
And they also give you a deadline that's very brief. Like,
and boom, then they pull it. They just pull the data. They say, you know what? It's been you did good, but there is no data set. And they'll even take somebody else's data who they use data points from those other reports, anything that has been pulled, and they will revoke their data. And most of the time they won't publish their article because they'll tell them the basis of your research came from a corrupted data set. You have to redo all of your experimentation, do a new data field, and then we will allow you to do it if the results are the same.
And then they flag their page so everybody sees it.
And then everybody sees it, currently under review. And you can see the printed title of the article and the first subject line, but you can't see any of the rest of the article that's written because it says currently under review, pending confirmation of follow-up study. So everybody knows they used a corrupted data set.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it was their data set they opted to not include some of the data points on, it would still be up.
Oh yeah.
Just without the data. Where's the data? Oh, and you know, if you look at that's how that works, right?
Yeah.
Now, there is the alternative, which is sometimes you have some of the papers where their data was also being used by somebody else who's on one of the pages that aren't published, so the data can't be published because it's also being used by something else, right?
Yes.
And in those cases, it does not the data's not missing. It says data is not
Right, I was
available.
going to say, you have a clause of why. Yeah,
It lets you know why, meaning, no, they did their research. The data was good.
it can't be in here for
They're contractually, they cannot have the data in here. But we have seen the data. The data supports this. ResearchGate says it does. Can we see the data? No. Can we contact the people about the data? No. And it even says on those papers, contact. It'll say afterwards, you may not, you can contact, be able to get contacts for some of the experiments done to be able to do this. If you're however, any inquiries about the data, and then they give a different website to be able to go to. Too many people inquiry about it, and then that switches, and those papers get switched, and then you have the same inquiry for them.
And then
even
your
though
name is also on a list of inquiry.
Right. Basically, if somebody's trying to get to data they're not supposed to have access to you through a public one, then eventually they just get folded into even though they don't have anything. This is a security clearance. Trying to get around a security clearance through a related published paper can end up having their stuff.
Especially when you've been told to stay away.
Right. So what's all this have to do with it? Well, it kind of is where you can understand where people were going. And in your case, you were reacting to the conditions of your body out of fear.
Oh, yeah. I'm good at fear.
Right? But you don't really apply that when it comes to any of your writing and your research. You don't use it in terms of how you've stood up to a lot of different organizations, right? But it existed because you hadn't looked at the same perspective, right? You have a priest, right? You take some of those priests, one of those priests, a lot of them, if you actually talked them through that the way that I did, they would go, oh yeah, if an alien comes, I can go. If it was a Jesuit, they'd go, who knows? Maybe that was the way that God actually wanted his plan to work. That works for me. Now, a Jesuit would have the faith that God meant it. See the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Having somebody else mention it helps out those who don't have the faith, who need more direct, tangible evidence. That's more kind of what I'm saying. So for you, you're used to your body failing. Your body failed you. Your body failed you. Your body failed you. So suddenly being in a position where your body is not the weak point, right? Considering your brain is pretty strong and you've got really high resiliency, you're having a hard time adjusting for the reality that your fear was incredibly justified before. In fact, if anything, you're finding from your physical therapist and your doctor that you did not have enough fear of your body.
True.
Correct?
Yes.
But right now, they're looking at you going, Ryan, I'm pretty sure, and this is what Randy probably said, I'm pretty sure you could knock out most of the athletes who come in here for rehabilitation. And I don't just mean the girls. It's like, by the time we're done rebuilding your calves, I'm pretty sure you could knock out any of them. You get your ankles, your feet, ankles, right? You get your ankles and feet worked up, you're going to be stable. Did you know that a professional boxer, if they were to hit a metal door, it won't damage their bones, their nerves, or their hands at all? It might.
I would believe that.
Abrasion on the skin, but it doesn't do that. Somebody else with the same exact musculature, if they hit a door, that's gonna hurt their bones. Why?
I don't know.
Because our body gets used to doing things, and so subconsciously they end up generating more of that bioelectric energy, and so it just accumulates, and they learn how to do it a little bit at a time over it. Right? Also, if they get hit, there's a story about a boxer who's in the 115-pound weight class. He was on a beach, and some big 6-foot-tall, 300-pound guy was harassing him and his girlfriend, trying to be able to do it, and they were kept going at him and going at him and going at him, and eventually one of this guy's friends went to hurt his girlfriend. And he hit the 6-foot-tall, 300-pound man once and snapped his neck. Ran over to where the other guy was, hit him once in the arm and broke the arm that was holding his girlfriend, and then punctured his ribs and broke his ribs, had them punctured his lungs, grabbed the girl, and they ran, called the police. He wasn't charged with anything. He throws those punches at other boxers all the time, and they don't have that effect. So what's the difference? The difference is professional boxers train themselves to be able to withstand concussive forces that are more powerful than you hitting a brick wall going 45 miles an hour.
That's crazy.
Does that make sense? It's kind of crazy, right? Nothing wrong with him. He did everything he could to avoid the fight, and he only acted when it looked like his girlfriend was in trouble. And then he snapped that out. Now, whether they were able to repair that man's broken neck so that he was paralyzed or not, I don't know. But I do know that, I think it was Ray Carbajal. Randy probably knows the story.
Yeah, I'll ask him tonight.
So the point is, people misunderstand the point of the Bible when it talks about choose to be gentle. If all you have is gentle, you're not choosing shit. You're weak. Doesn't say choose to be weak, does it?
No.
So if you don't have the ability to be a monster, you're not choosing anything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't go out and get in fights all the time. Right? I'm going to try and diffuse the situation. But if it came down to it, if somebody looked like they were going to grab one of my boys and start to run off, you better believe me that I'm pretty convinced if somebody grabbed one of my boys and threw him in a car, I would be able to run to the car, punch through the windshield, grab them, and stop them. Right? But I wouldn't get into a fight. If I'm by myself, it's not going to be worth it. I would leave.
Right.
Right? Ego doesn't come into it. So the point is, you're strong enough now, and you know enough now, because most people know absolutely nothing about fighting, that you could probably disable 90% of the population with what you know already about boxing and knowing how to throw a jab properly. Does that make sense? This is probably something that your boxing instructor has started talking to you about, right?
Yeah, and I didn't believe
Until you didn't believe him until you saw what happened to the dude who, when he blocked a pad, got tipped on his ass.
Yeah.
And he looked at you, and he goes, do you realize that, he says, whoa, wow, he really did that. And he goes, right. So do you know why I wouldn't have you do it? She goes, why? Since you figured out how to add that hip twist, he goes, you would have probably knocked him out. So you hit harder than Dante. No, I don't. Hey, Dante. And he had the two of you walk to opposite sides of the bag. And he said, both of you, when I say 3 jab, boom. And Dante was like, what the frick happened to my hand? He goes, that was Ingvar. He goes, watch, now I'm going to jab. I have a better jab than you. Jab. And he jabbed at the same time as you, and you went, ow, what happened to my hand? You see how Dante had that reaction? Yeah. That's because Dante had a better jab than you. See how Dante knocked that guy on his ass? Yeah, you would have knocked him out. He goes, if I threw a jab at that hand, I have a chance at breaking his arm or his wrist if he's holding the pad, if I threw that. They said, I actually throw full power jabs at you when you're holding the pad. I can do that for you. I can do it for Dante, and I can do it for the two girls. I can only do it with Dante because he had to learn how to take your jab. And you went, oh. He's like, you still don't get it. It's more important for you than for the other two. You throw a jab with the same energy that most idiots out there, let's take dipshit over there. He points at that guy. He goes, if I gave him a bat and I told him to swing it at somebody, he would probably do the same amount of damage that you would with a jab. And less damage than you would with either one of these punches. He hit him with a bat to there, and you threw one of these. If he did it, they would go, ow! If you threw one of those, they would crumple, and they would not get back up. No back. So right now, you're more dangerous than the idiot over there is if I gave him a bat. Now, before you get too big of a head, that's a wooden bat. She goes, I do about the same amount of damage that he would if I gave him a metal bat. The owner of the gym does about as much damage as it would if I gave him a metal bat and I put weights on the end of it. Because that guy's freaking scary. Right? So, but the point is, if you can already do as much damage with a jab as some guy does with a freaking bat, you are no longer, like, fighting is no longer a game. You can't get into a fight because you're mad. You can't get into a fight because you're angry. You throw a punch, it's like swinging a bat. Now, some people don't like that because they get into a lot of fights. I would tell them, I can't teach you anymore. I've kicked guys out of the club because I'm like, look, you're not learning enough. Says this moron over there, he won't get ever partnered up with someone like you to teach him. I won't teach him how to box properly until I see his attitude change. Some boxing clubs do. But that comes from the boss. He's like, no, you're not teaching somebody to go around where they can swing a bat at an unsuspecting person thinking that they're just facing somebody's hands. This is what he told you, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you this because you can't go around thinking that all you have is these little baby paws that are slapping at people.
He yelled at me because I said I felt like I was a little cub, a lion.
That training comes out whether you want to or not. He goes, the one thing you should be freaked out about